487,000 kilometers. That is how far a Toyota Camry in Osaka, Japan traveled on its original engine. No rebuild, no replacement, the same block, the same head, the same internals it rolled out of the factory with. Meanwhile, the exact same Camry model in America averages barely 240,000 kilometers before the engine needs major work. Same car, same engineering, same factory in HE prefecture. So what is the difference? It is not the oil. It is not the gasoline. It is a single maintenance procedure that takes 5 minutes, costs absolutely nothing, and lives inside every Toyota engine computer built after 2005. And here's what should concern you. 99% of Western Toyota owners have never heard of it. Your dealer has never mentioned it. Not once. But in Japan, mechanics perform it as routinely as an oil change. The gap between what Japanese mechanics know and what your dealer tells you is costing you thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of kilometers of engine life. Right now, under the hood of your Toyota, there's a computer called the Engine Control Unit, or ECU. It controls everything. How much fuel enters each cylinder, when the spark plugs fire, how the throttle responds to your foot, and how the transmission decides when to shift. And this computer does something remarkable. It learns. Every time you drive, the ECU monitors oxygen sensor readings, intake air volume, exhaust gas composition, and dozens of other parameters. It stores what it learns in two systems: short-term fuel trim, which reacts instantly, and long-term fuel trim, which stores permanent adjustments in a type of memory chip called electrically erasable programmable read-only memory, EEPROM. When was the last time your dealer mentioned either of those terms to you? Here's why this matters. When your fuel injectors get slightly dirty, your ECU compensates by adding more fuel. When carbon builds up on your intake valves, the computer adjusts timing to keep the engine running smoothly. When your spark plugs wear down and the gap widens, the ECU advances or retards ignition timing to compensate. Each individual adjustment is tiny. But after 30,000 kilometers of accumulated drift, your engine computer has moved so far from factory optimal that it is burning 8 to 12% more fuel than it should. Your throttle response feels sluggish because the computer has gradually dulled it. Your transmission shifts lazily because it is receiving compromised data from a drifted engine computer. And the worst part is you do not notice it happening because it drifts so slowly. 1% here, 0.5% there, day after day, month after month, until one morning you realize your car does not feel the way it used to and you cannot explain why. That is exactly the problem Japanese mechanics solved decades ago. In Japan, mechanics perform what they call a gakushuu risetto, a learning value reset. It is built directly into Toyota's professional diagnostic software called Techstream. You navigate to powertrain, then engine and ECT, then utility, then learning value reset. One click, 90 seconds. Every stored fuel trim adaptation, every idle parameter, every throttle response map returns to factory baseline. The engine then relearns everything from scratch. Here's the critical difference. It relearns with clean injectors, fresh spark plugs, new oil, and a fresh air filter. So instead of building adaptations on top of old compensations on top of even older drift, the computer starts clean with equipment that is actually in good condition. Think about what that means for your engine. Every 30,000 kilometers, the computer gets a fresh start. No accumulated error, no stacked compensations masking real problems, just clean data from properly maintained components. Japan's biennial vehicle inspection system, known as the Shaken, is among the most rigorous in the world. It requires vehicles to meet strict safety and emission standards every 2 years. And the maintenance culture surrounding the system is what keeps Japanese engines running for 500,000 kilometers. Mechanics there treat the learning value reset as standard protocol. Not optional, not a special request, standard. But here's where the story takes a turn that should make every Toyota owner pay attention. Around 2005, Toyota moved their fuel trim learning data from volatile keep-alive memory to the EEPROM chip. Before that change, you could reset the learned values by simply disconnecting the battery for a few minutes. The power loss would erase the volatile memory, and the engine control unit would start fresh. After 2005, that stopped working. The EEPROM retains data even without power. It is designed to survive battery disconnections. So if you are driving a Toyota or Lexus from 2005 or newer, and you have never performed a proper learning value reset, your engine computer is carrying every single adaptation it has ever learned. Years of accumulated drift that no battery disconnect will ever clear. Let that number sink in. If you bought your car in 2015 and you have never reset the learning values, that is 10 years of stacked compensation sitting in your engine computer right now. 10 years of the ECU masking dirty injectors, compensating for carbon buildup, adjusting for worn sensors, and because the compensations mask the symptoms, you never realize there is a problem until something fails catastrophically. So how do you actually do this without a $1,500 Techstream setup? Here's the manual procedure that works on virtually every Toyota and Lexus from 2005 through 2024. Camry, Corolla, RAV4, Highlander, 4, Runner, Tacoma, Tundra, and their Lexus equivalents. First, warm your engine to normal operating temperature. Drive it for at least 15 minutes, then turn the engine off. Open the hood and locate the EFI fuse in the underhood fuse box. It is typically a 15 amp fuse clearly marked EFI. Pull that fuse out and wait a full 5 minutes. Not 3, not 4, a full 5 minutes. This allows the EEPROM capacitors to fully discharge and the stored learning values to clear. After 5 minutes, reinstall the fuse. Start the engine with every accessory turned off. No air conditioning, no radio, no headlights. Let the engine idle for 10 full minutes without touching the throttle pedal. Do not rev it. Do not touch anything. Just let it idle. The ECU is establishing new baseline values during this time. After 10 minutes, turn the engine off. Wait 30 seconds. Restart and let it idle until the RPM stabilizes between 650 and 750. Then drive normally for 15 to 20 kilometers to complete the full relearn cycle. Try this after your next oil change and spark plug replacement. The difference will be immediate. So what actually happens when those learned values finally get wiped clean? After a proper learning value reset, 3 things happen that owners notice right away. These are not placebo effects. These are measurable changes you can verify yourself with a basic scan tool. First, fuel economy improves. 5 to 12% is typical because the ECU is no longer overfueling to compensate for conditions that your maintenance already corrected. If you changed your spark plugs but never reset the ECU, the computer is still adding fuel as if the old worn plugs were installed. That is wasted gasoline on every single combustion stroke. Second, throttle response sharpens. The engine feels more alive and more responsive because the throttle mapping has returned to factory calibration instead of the gradually dulled values that accumulated over thousands of kilometers of adaptation. Third, shift points on automatic transmissions improve. The transmission control module receives cleaner, more accurate input data from the freshly calibrated engine computer. Owners on Toyota forums describe this as the car finally shifting the way it did when it was new, and the data supports what they feel. Normal long-term fuel trim should sit close to 0, ideally within plus or minus 5%. A check engine light triggers at around plus or minus 25%, but anything above 10% means your ECU is working harder than it should. After a proper reset combined with basic maintenance, those fuel trim values drop back towards 0. That is measurable, verifiable proof on a scan tool that the procedure works. And here's the question your dealer will never answer honestly. Why do they not offer this? A learning value reset through Techstream takes a Toyota dealer technician approximately 90 seconds. They have the software, they have the cable, they have the training, but they do not charge for it because they do not offer it. The economic incentive runs the opposite direction. When your ECU masks a developing misfire by enriching fuel trim, you eventually come in for a $400 injector cleaning, a $250 ignition coil replacement, a $180 diagnostic scan that tells you what a free reset would have revealed years earlier. That is not a conspiracy. It is simply a maintenance culture gap between Japan and the West. Japanese mechanics prevent problems. Western dealers profit from them. And this principle extends far beyond Toyota. Every major Japanese automaker engineered the same adaptive learning into their engine computers, and every one of them drifts the same way. Honda calls their version an ECM reset, accessible through their HDS diagnostic software. Subaru stores learning values in the ECU that can be reset through their SSM diagnostic system. Mazda's Skyactiv engines, with their high 14:1 compression ratios, benefit enormously from regular resets because the ECU not correction values drift aggressively to protect against detonation, often retarding timing far beyond what is actually necessary. How many extra liters of fuel has your car burned because of learned values that should have been reset years ago? The computer inside your engine learns. That learning drifts over time. Periodic resets restore optimal performance. This is not a secret to Japanese mechanics. It is standard procedure that the rest of the world simply never adopted. That Toyota in Osaka, with 487,000 kilometers on its original engine, did not survive on luck. It survived on a maintenance philosophy that treats the engine computer as seriously as the engine oil. That knowledge is something every Japanese mechanic has, something every Toyota ECU contains, and something your dealer will never volunteer. How many kilometers could your engine last if you started treating it the way Japanese mechanics do? Try the EFI fuse procedure after your next service. Monitor your fuel trims with a $10 OBD2 scanner. Watch the numbers drop back towards zero. That is your engine telling you it is finally breathing properly again. And in our next video, we reveal the 3 Japanese oil change secrets that make Western mechanics look decades behind, including a viscosity protocol that most owners' manuals in America and Europe get completely wrong. Subscribe so you do not miss it. Your engine remembers everything. Make sure it remembers the right things.